When a woman becomes too emotionally available, especially in the context of healing a man's pain, she unintentionally removes one of the most magnetic elements in romantic dynamics: mystery. You see, mystery is not just about secrecy. It's not about playing games or withholding love. It's about energy, about restraint, and about letting the unknown work in your favor. Men are naturally drawn to challenges. They are not designed to fall for something that is too easily understood or too quickly attained. When you make yourself too accessible, especially on an emotional level, when you show him the route to overcome every dark thought, every hidden insecurity, every emotional downfall, he no longer has to earn your trust, your presence, or your value. It's already been handed to him. And once that happens, the desire to pursue, to conquer, to win, it begins to fade. When you show a man his own path to emotional healing too early, you disrupt a fundamental dynamic. You're showing him not only how to feel better, but you're placing yourself in a position where you're leading the emotional space. While this may sound noble or nurturing, in the realm of masculine and feminine energy, it often leads to imbalance. A man wants to discover himself through his own battles. He needs to feel like the leader of his emotional world. The moment you show him that you see through him, that you can guide him through his emotional mess, that you can be the therapist he never asked for, you become too exposed. The magnetic tension is gone. He starts to think, she knows too much about me. I don't have to try anymore. I don't have to become more. She already accepts my wounds. And while acceptance is beautiful, too much of it too soon kills motivation. You are no longer the enigma. You become the emotional safety net. And that's not where passion grows. Passion grows in the chase, in the wonder, in the sense that there's more to discover about you. Mystery creates gravity. When he feels like he doesn't know everything about you, when he senses that you are not giving all your emotional energy to him on a silver platter, he becomes curious. And curiosity is the seed of desire. Curiosity keeps his mind on you when he's driving, working, or lying in bed at night. He starts thinking, what is she feeling? What does she want? Why is she so calm when I'm chaotic? Why doesn't she try to fix me like others do? This internal questioning builds emotional value in his mind. The very thing you're holding back becomes the thing he wants more of. That's how you become unforgettable. Not by giving him every answer to his emotional struggle, but by letting him find his own way while you remain steady, mysterious, and composed. A man builds emotional attraction not through comfort, but through fascination. When you give too much, you become the comfort. When you withhold just enough, you become the fascination. And this doesn't mean you should be cold or distant. It means you should master the art of restraint, emotional control, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, knowing when to engage and when to simply let him sit in his own emotional fire. That's how respect is born. That's how depth is created. Because if he feels like you can always decode his emotions, he loses the need to go deeper himself. You've already done the inner work for him. And anything that comes too easily is rarely appreciated. Men may crave emotional safety in theory, but in reality, they chase emotional elevation. They want a woman who doesn't just understand their pain, but who doesn't make it her mission to fix it. There's a huge difference between being compassionate and being his emotional crutch. When you show a man how to heal himself too quickly, he will lean on you, yes, but not in love. He'll lean on you out of convenience, out of weakness, out of habit. And when he no longer needs that emotional support, he often walks away, not because you weren't valuable, but because your value was poured out too soon, too easily, too often. The woman who holds back a little remains in control. Not manipulative control, but the type of spiritual and emotional power that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. That energy whispers, I see you, but I don't need to fix you. I feel you, but I won't lose myself in your storm. That kind of woman is rare and unforgettable. A man will chase that energy far longer than he will chase someone who hands him emotional clarity before he's earned it. Mystery doesn't mean you're hiding who you are. It means you're protecting your power. It means you're giving only what has been earned. Because what is earned is valued, and what is valued is pursued. A man's evolution is deeply tied to the struggles he endures and the storms he faces. Struggle is not his enemy, it is his sculptor. It chisels his identity, sharpens his mind, and strengthens his will. When a man is allowed to walk through fire on his own, he learns the language of resilience. He learns how to lead himself, and that, more than anything, builds his capacity to love, to protect, and to commit with depth. But when a woman steps in too soon, trying to carry his emotional burdens, trying to calm every storm before it shakes him, she unknowingly steals that experience from him. She interferes with the natural process of masculine growth. It often comes from a place of care. You see him hurting, withdrawn, discouraged, frustrated, and your instinct says, help him, fix it, make it better. But in doing so, you interrupt his internal transformation. You become the bridge he never had to build for himself. And bridges that aren't built with one's own hands are never truly appreciated. Letting a man face his storms doesn't mean you don't care. It means you understand that struggle is sacred. It means you trust in his ability to rise even when he doubts himself. It means you honor his path enough to not interfere with it. Men do not become grounded by being comforted out of every low moment. They become grounded by learning how to find their own emotional center even when the world is collapsing around them. If you rescue him from that moment, you rob him of discovering his strength. You become the hero of his journey instead of letting him earn that role for himself. And as noble as it might feel, being someone's emotional savior doesn't lead to lasting respect. It leads to emotional dependency. And emotional dependency is the death of romantic polarity. What a man truly needs, though he may never say it, is space. Space to wrestle with his darkness. Space to sit in silence and confront what he's been avoiding. Space to lose battles and get up bloody and breathless. Because it's in those moments that his masculine energy is reforged. It is in those private internal wars where he begins to remember who he is. The man who overcomes his own pain becomes the man who is capable of holding space for another. But a man who is rescued from his pain over and over never matures beyond it. He stays small, uncertain, and emotionally passive. When you step in too early, trying to heal him, trying to soothe his wounds, you become the reason he doesn't have to try. He begins to rely on your strength instead of developing his own. And here's what happens next. He starts resenting that reliance. Not consciously, but energetically. He may even feel guilt. He may begin to feel emasculated, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because deep down, he knows he hasn't earned his peace. He hasn't walked the fire alone. And a man who hasn't walked through fire alone will never fully stand tall beside you. This is why detachment is powerful. It's not about being cold, it's about allowing him to grow. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you don't need to emotionally babysit him. It's the internal poise that says, I trust your path. I respect your process. I don't need to fix your storm because it was never mine to fix. That kind of feminine presence is unforgettable. It is calming and empowering at the same time. It challenges a man to rise to his own potential, to find solutions within himself, to face his reflection and sharpen his soul. A woman who understands this truth doesn't rush in to wipe away every tear or offer comfort at every turn. She understands the difference between compassion and emotional codependence. She gives support without sacrificing her position. She doesn't carry his burden. She allows him to find the muscles to carry it himself. And when he does, he doesn't just thank her for it, he respects her deeply. He sees her not as someone who coddled him, but as someone who honored his becoming. Every man must reach a point where he meets his breaking point and chooses not to break. And that choice must be his alone. That strength cannot be borrowed, it must be owned. When you try to soften every blow, when you constantly provide a cushion for his falls, he misses the lesson hidden in the fall itself. And love, real love, is not about removing all pain. It is about standing still, standing present, while the other person transforms. It takes more strength to watch someone suffer than to fix their suffering for them. But that strength is what makes your presence magnetic. You become the woman who didn't need to mother him. You become the woman who trusted his soul to fight its own battle. And that trust, that respect, that patience, it creates a bond more powerful than any emotional rescue ever could. A man does not fall in love with the woman who fixes him. He falls in love with the woman who inspires him to fix himself. There's a vast difference between being someone's emotional crutch and being the fire that pushes them toward growth. When a woman tries to heal every wound, soothe every emotion, and rescue a man from every shadow he faces, she becomes more of a therapist than a partner. And while he may appreciate it for a time, it doesn't stir passion. It doesn't create the kind of energy that leads to deep emotional attraction. What truly moves a man, what captivates his heart and mind, is a woman who holds space without trying to solve. A woman who believes in him without shrinking herself to lift him. A woman who embodies strength not as a savior, but as a silent lighthouse guiding from a distance. A man grows when he is forced to rise. He matures when he is left with no choice but to face his own fears and conquer his own doubts. And for that to happen, he needs inspiration, not instruction. He needs to see strength in the woman he loves, not as something that overshadows him, but as something that challenges him to level up. The moment a woman steps into the role of fixer, the dynamic shifts. She becomes the one who leads the emotional space. She becomes the one constantly offering solutions, digging deep into his psyche, holding up the mirror and walking him through his own healing. And while her intentions may be pure, the impact is rarely what she expects. Over time, he may become emotionally dependent on her guidance, or worse, he may begin to feel like a project rather than a partner. Men do not crave being healed. They crave being seen, respected, and inspired. And that respect is born when a woman lets him stand in his chaos without intervening. When she doesn't try to explain away his pain or take responsibility for his emotional evolution, instead she remains grounded in her own presence, calm in her own energy, and focused on her own life. That kind of woman doesn't chase him into his darkness. She waits on the other side of it, shining in her own light and silently daring him to find his way through, not for her, but for himself. And here's where it becomes powerful. A man will move mountains for a woman who doesn't try to move them for him. He will fight his demons when he knows no one else is going to fight them for him. He'll step up, grow up, and show up when he realizes that love is not permission to stay wounded. A woman who inspires him to rise does so, not by telling him how, but by being the kind of person who makes him want to be better, not out of pressure, but out of admiration. Inspiration lives in the subtle things. It's in her discipline, in her emotional control, in her silence when he expects noise. It's in the way she doesn't tolerate being treated like an emotional dumping ground. It's in the way she doesn't chase after him when he pulls away. It's in the way she continues to evolve, love herself, and build her world, regardless of whether he's beside her or not. That kind of woman becomes a mirror not of his flaws, but of his potential. She doesn't point out what's broken. She shows what's possible by becoming it. And when he sees her walking in her own power, something in him wakes up. He realizes that if he doesn't rise, he'll lose her. Not because she's punishing him, but because she's too aligned to slow down for someone who won't do the work. Love becomes transformative when it doesn't try to transform the other person. When it simply holds the frequency high enough that the other person is forced to choose, evolve or be left behind. The woman who can do this becomes unforgettable. She becomes the one who didn't carry his pain but inspired him to finally face it. She becomes the reason he learned to regulate his emotions, the reason he stopped running, the reason he started to build instead of break. She becomes a part of his awakening, not by saving him, but by showing him what's worth saving himself for. When a man feels that kind of energy, he doesn't want to lose it because it's rare. It's rare to find someone who doesn't demand your healing but makes you want to heal anyway. It's rare to find someone who doesn't try to fix you but makes you want to be whole. That energy creates pull. It creates hunger. It creates movement. And movement is where growth lives. That's where love takes root. Not in dependency, but in inspired transformation. When you show a man your entire emotional landscape too quickly, you take away his natural desire to explore you. Men are not wired to cherish what is handed to them without effort. They are driven by pursuit, by curiosity, by the need to unravel layers over time. When you reveal your inner world too soon, your past, your traumas, your fears, your triggers, your need to heal him or be healed by him, you bypass the slow build of emotional tension and skip directly to emotional intimacy without letting it be earned. And what is not earned is rarely valued. It's not manipulation, it's emotional wisdom. It's understanding that true connection is not rushed. It's layered, discovered, unfolded moment by moment. Many women confuse vulnerability with overexposure. Vulnerability, when used with discernment, is powerful. It allows someone to feel connected to your truth. But overexposure, when given without boundaries, becomes noise. It floods a man with too much too soon. He doesn't feel the need to lean in because you've already laid everything bare. You've opened the treasure chest without letting him search for the key. There is no wonder, no mystery, no reason for him to ask questions or feel the urge to get to know you deeper. He already knows everything. And the emotional landscape, once a vast and beautiful unknown, becomes predictable and easily mapped. This is why silence is powerful. This is why restraint is magnetic. The woman who doesn't rush to be understood, who isn't constantly trying to be seen or validated, holds a presence that draws people in. She doesn't spill her heart every time she feels connection. She understands that connection grows stronger when space is honored, when the silence between two people speaks louder than words, when not everything has to be explained, justified, or processed immediately. She knows that giving a man access to her emotions is a privilege, not a right. It's something that must be earned through consistency, respect, and presence. When a man sees that you're not giving him all your emotions up front, he is drawn in by the unknown. He wonders about your thoughts, your silence, your calm energy. He begins to lean in. He starts to pay attention. His curiosity drives him to discover you slowly. And through that process, real intimacy is formed because it's not just given, it's cultivated. You don't build deep connection by unloading your emotional past in the first few moments of closeness. You build it through shared moments, through watching each other, through the natural unfolding of trust. When you try to explain every feeling and correct every misunderstanding too soon, you disrupt that unfolding. You try to control the emotional climate when in reality love thrives in the uncontrolled. In the subtle shifts, the unspoken energy, the lingering eye contact, the long pauses. A man doesn't fall in love with a woman who explains herself to death. He falls in love with a woman who lets the mystery live. The one who doesn't rush to label things or pour her heart out before the connection has had time to deepen. He respects the woman who knows that emotional expression has timing, and the timing is everything. And here's what's most overlooked. When you are too quick to expose your emotional world, he doesn't just lose the desire to explore you, he also loses the space to process his own emotions. He becomes overwhelmed even if he doesn't say it. Your emotional flood leaves no room for his emotional clarity. Instead of building a shared emotional rhythm, it becomes a one-sided performance of feelings. He may pull away, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know how to meet that energy yet. You've jumped 5 steps ahead on the emotional ladder while he's still trying to figure out where the first rung is. Let him figure it out. Let him move toward you without having everything already laid out for him. Let him earn your emotional truth piece by piece. That's how respect grows. That's how depth is formed. Don't teach him how to love you in the first few weeks. Let him learn through your presence, through your actions, through your consistency. Don't give him the blueprint to your soul before he's shown that he values the foundation. Because a man who values you will want to know more. He will ask, he will watch, he will listen. And through that organic discovery, real emotional intimacy will begin to grow. Not from overexposure, but from intentional revelation. Not from emotional excess, but from graceful restraint. One of the deepest mistakes a woman can make is to become the emotional home for a man who hasn't built one within himself. When you allow a man to use you as his emotional pillow, his relief, his refuge, his escape from personal accountability, you take on a burden that is not yours to carry. You absorb his chaos, his confusion, his unresolved pain, and you start confusing that weight for love. You think you're helping him. You think you're showing how deeply you care, but what's really happening is the slow erosion of your own emotional energy. You begin to drown in emotions that were never yours to begin with. And he learns to offload onto you instead of growing through it himself. There is a reason men are called to be emotionally grounded before they commit to leading anyone else. When a man has not faced himself, when he has not done the internal work to understand his own feelings, patterns, and emotional blind spots, he becomes unstable. And if you allow yourself to be the person who regulates that instability, you turn into a mirror for his wounds instead of a partner in his growth. You begin to feel responsible for his mood swings. You walk on eggshells trying to keep him balanced. You shrink yourself so you don't trigger him. You start monitoring every word, every silence, every sigh, just to make sure he stays emotionally intact. That is not love. That is emotional captivity. And here's where it gets even more complicated. He may actually start depending on you for that emotional regulation. He'll come to you with every crisis, every breakdown, every wave of insecurity. You'll become his therapist, his mother, his cheerleader, all in one. He will start to see you not as a woman to rise for, but as the person who will keep catching him every time he falls. He won't feel the urgency to evolve because you've made it too easy to stay broken. He knows that no matter how deeply he falls into his patterns, you'll be there with open arms and open heart, ready to fix, to soothe, to make things better. But this kind of dynamic always backfires because over time, resentment builds. You'll resent him for not showing up fully. You'll feel emotionally drained and spiritually starved. And he too will begin to resent you, not consciously, but subtly. He'll feel that he is being mothered, not respected. He'll feel that you've seen too much of him, too deeply, too raw, too soon. Men don't fall in love with women who carry their emotional weight. They fall in love with women who challenge them to carry it themselves. They are drawn to the kind of woman who, without saying a word, says, "This is your burden. If you want to walk beside me, learn how to lift it." Emotional maturity is not about who can feel the most. It's about who can manage what they feel without harming the people around them. A man who has not reached that place will use the woman closest to him as a dumping ground, even if he doesn't realize it. And if she allows it, she becomes emotionally hijacked by his wounds. Her peace becomes tied to his storms. Her joy becomes dependent on his healing. And the moment you allow someone else's emotional instability to dictate your inner world, you lose your power. You lose your center. A man must learn to sit with himself. He must learn to cry without needing someone to rescue him. He must learn to calm his own nervous system without using a woman as a regulator. He must learn to be his own peace before he asks to be part of someone else's. Because until he does, any relationship he enters will be built on emotional imbalance. And the woman will carry the weight of what he hasn't dealt with. Not because she has to, but because she doesn't yet realize that love isn't about emotional martyrdom. The woman who knows her worth will not accept being a man's emotional landing pad. She will not allow his pain to become her project. She will not confuse empathy with emotional labor. She can hold space, yes, but only space. Not weight, not chaos, not emotional codependency disguised as love. She will say with her actions, you are welcome to grow here, but you are not welcome to avoid growth here. She will not rescue him from himself, because she knows that the man who learns to carry his own emotions becomes the man capable of holding space for hers. And anything less than that is not alignment. It's emotional survival. And she didn't come this far just to survive love. There's a quiet power in being emotionally independent. When a woman no longer seeks validation, attention, or emotional security from a man, she steps into a realm of influence that cannot be manipulated, rushed, or controlled. She becomes magnetic, not because she is chasing connection, but because she is connected deeply to herself. Her emotions are not up for negotiation. They don't swing based on how someone feels about her. She knows her worth isn't tied to a response, a compliment, or the presence of a man in her life. And that kind of energy shifts the entire dynamic between a man and a woman. Men are drawn to emotional sovereignty, not the loud kind, not the cold or hardened kind, but the kind that whispers, I am enough with or without you. That calm certainty, that grounded energy, that unshakable inner peace is something that doesn't need to speak. It's felt. And when a man encounters a woman like this, he knows he's not walking into a space where he can play with emotions. He knows there are boundaries, not walls, standards, not desperation. She's not sitting there hoping he picks her. She's observing whether or not he aligns with the life she's already built, and that changes everything. The emotionally independent woman doesn't panic when a man pulls away. She doesn't fall apart when he doesn't respond. She doesn't spiral into self-doubt when his energy shifts, because her peace isn't dependent on his consistency. Her self-worth isn't tethered to his affection. She has done the inner work to regulate her emotions, to affirm her value, and to stay grounded in moments of uncertainty. That level of control isn't cold. It's divine. It's sacred. It says, I am here, but I do not chase. I give love, but I do not beg. I feel deeply, but I do not lose myself in the process. This kind of emotional independence takes time to build. It's not born from arrogance. It's born from pain, from healing, from the long journey of remembering who you are outside of anyone else's gaze. It comes from choosing yourself over and over again, from walking away when your soul says no, even if your heart is tempted to stay, from holding your silence when chaos tries to pull you into noise, from refusing to explain yourself to someone who only wants to hear what's convenient. It's in these small moments, these tiny acts of self-preservation, that true emotional independence is formed. And it doesn't mean you don't want love. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you love from fullness, not emptiness. You give from overflow, not lack. You share your heart, but you don't lose your mind. You let people in, but you're not afraid to let them go. You're not clinging to a relationship to feel whole. You're not holding on to a man just to feel seen, because you've already seen yourself. You've already held yourself through the worst. You've already chosen to rise again and again without applause. So now, if someone is going to stand beside you, they must come whole. They must come steady. They must come correct. And when a man meets a woman like that, he sees what true emotional power looks like. She doesn't react, she responds. She doesn't explain, she embodies. She doesn't demand, she inspires. She knows that her presence alone is a statement. She's not proving anything, she's living it. And if he wants to be part of that world, he must elevate, not because she said so, but because her energy requires it. Her peace won't allow chaos to stay. Her standards won't let inconsistency survive. Her boundaries will not bend for potential. She's not interested in fixing, forcing, or waiting for someone to figure it out. She's moving, she's building, she's thriving. And if he wants to walk with her, he must be ready to walk at her pace. This is the energy that flips the dynamic. Instead of being the one wondering where she stands, she becomes the one he seeks clarity with. Instead of overthinking his every word, she watches his patterns. Instead of begging for love, she commands it through her presence. And all of this stems from one truth. She doesn't need anyone to complete her emotional experience. She is her own center, her own peace, her own validation. She can cry without collapsing. She can love without losing. She can stay soft without being weak. Because emotional independence is not the absence of feeling. It's the ability to feel everything without being consumed by anything.